Well, again, good afternoon. Welcome to our February briefing on digital developments during the previous month. Welcome to our guest. In particular, delegation from Indonesia, with whom we this morning discussed some ideas on the future of cyber diplomacy, and we're really honored to have them today with us in Geneva. Big welcome to our friends and colleagues online from in hubs in Tunisia, Rio, and Southeastern Europe, and other places worldwide for those of you who are following it online. As we already discussed in January, 2017 is likely to be quite a dynamic year when it comes to digital policy. Developments are picking up, and February has been very busy month in the field of digital policy, as you can see from the digital GIP newsletters, monthly newsletters. We'll follow today our usual patterns of the monthly briefing. We'll start with a survey of the main events. We'll go quickly through the barometer, and then we'll focus on four trends that we think were the gaining momentum during the previous few weeks. And then we will open the space for questions here in the room and questions online. And our briefing then will move to the regional updates from the Tunisia, Rio, and Southeast Europe. We'll start now with the, could I have the first slide, Harvin? With a quick summary of the major events. As you can see, it was a short month, but quite packed with the events. The few are quite important related to cyber security. Munich Security Conference, which is traditionally held in February, an important event. One of the first engagement of the new US administration with international actors in Europe and beyond. For cybersecurity was high on the agenda, and the Global Commission on Cyber Stability was established, as we will hear later on. UN group of government experts had a meeting last week here in Geneva, advancing the drafting on their report. And now at the end of the month we have two important events. One is a Mobile Barcelona conference on Mobile World Congress, and Human Rights Council, which started this week, and it will go on during the month of March here in Geneva, and cyber will be one of the important issues. Next. Our barometer is, as you can see, showing somewhere increasing, mainly increasing pressure, somewhere the same pressure. In global IG architecture, there was an interesting proposal, and we'll reflect in more details during the trends phase from the Microsoft, suggesting the adoption of Geneva Digital Convention. There were quite a few discussions on sustainable development. Security was high on the agenda because of the already mentioned Munich conference, UNGG meeting here in Geneva, and also publishing of the Tallinn report, the second version of Tallinn report, covering a wider range of digital policy issues. In e-commerce and internet governance, we have in the internet economy, we have more or less the same trend, and quite a few issues related to the position of Uber as a company worldwide, juridical cases, and also government decision impacting the future of Uber. Malta proposed that Europe should become the Bitcoin continent, which is an interesting proposal by Prime Minister of Malta. In the field of digital rights, there were quite a few developments in Cameroon by having the whole region of the Cameroon removed from the internet for the explanation from the government for security reasons. And you can see all details in the document that we circulated. Next slide, Arvin. On the jurisdiction issues, there is a ruling of the Philadelphia judge on Google search engine results, and we'll focus on it later on. And on infrastructure, one of the long disputes and important disputes on internet governance was settled in the United States on the .Africa domain. The court in California ruled that objections to assign the .Africa domain to the African commissions were not, didn't satisfy the legal requirements. Therefore, now ICANN can delegate the management of .Africa to the African Union Commission and the company which was assigned by African Union Commission. On the question of infrastructure, there is a Cisco report, 2017 report on cybersecurity, indicating one of interesting developments, increase of the spam traffic on the internet, mainly through the use of Internet of Things, of botnet for the spam traffic. Net neutrality has been more or less neutral, as you can see, but we can expect more storms, especially after the new chairman of the FCC, Federal Communication Commission, was appointed in the United States, who is the vocal opponent of the principle of net neutrality. New technologies are developing very fast, and new, mainly Internet of Things devices are coming on the global agenda. Application of drones for the services in Dubai. Dubai is considering regulating use of the drones for the delivery and other services in Dubai. Next. Now we'll focus on out of those major developments, we'll focus on the few top trends which mark the last few weeks. Next. The first one, more on the symbolic level and more of indicating the long-term trend, is the Microsoft proposal for the Digital Geneva Convention. For those of you who have been following these developments, you can have the broader context why it is happened. Mainly private companies and Microsoft are realizing that the cooperation with the governments in the field of cybersecurity will be essential. And Microsoft has a long history of engaging with the diplomatic processes through OSCE, through UNGG, United Nations Government Group of Experts. Therefore, it is in a way expected development coming from them. There are many open questions, and while it sounds really important, and the major developments, there are questions: what should the Geneva Digital Convention regulate? How should it be implemented? Should it deal with national security or human security? As you know, Geneva Convention, humanitarian conventions are dealing mainly with the human security, because Microsoft is mainly pointing to the governments and their responsibility in cybersecurity, while using the humanitarian convention, Geneva, as the main analogy and inspiration. There are many questions, and I'm sure that there will be a lot of discussion. This proposal is, if you can put it, half-baked, and it needs a lot of legal and policy work, but I guess the main idea is to launch the discussion to see how one can create this framework in which there should be government's engagement and responsibility in creating norms, and more multi-stakeholder implementation of the norm. Microsoft used an analogy between Geneva Convention and the Red Cross. As you know, Geneva Convention is intergovernmental treaty. Red Cross is the private organization established under Swiss law. They also use analogy with the International Atomic Agency, as when they try to focus on the need for expertise in identifying the source of internet attacks. Next. Well, the fake news, I'm sure that we can spend hours, if not days, discussing the fake, false news, post-truth, and the other issue. Fake news are quite dominant in the public space, and there are the discussion, there is a growing concern of users, governments, internet companies, and the main focus on the question what should be the role of intermediaries, internet companies on which platforms the fake news are usually distributed. They're referring mainly to Facebook, but also Twitter and other internet companies. There are many open issues. This question how to define it, what is the difference between fake and false news, the question of truth, the reality aspects, and the discussion on fake news has everything from real philosophical considerations to pure security considerations. It is now in a focus after the main focus in the United States. Now with the approaching elections in France and the European countries, there is more and more discussion how to regulate that in different European countries. The question, there are few solutions. One is automatic filtering by using artificial intelligence applications of the content on the internet and identifying what could be considered to be a fake news. Next, please. Next major development, I would say more structural, is related to the focus on jobs when it comes to the, one can say, broader socio-political and economic life. As you know, in the US presidential elections, the sort of question of jobs and economic development was highly prominent. It is also now reappearing in different policy discussion in election campaigns worldwide. One structural issue that we noticed in discussion is that many jobs which are lost due to the digitalizations cannot be basically recreated. And that deeper structural question is represented by this Schumpeter cycle of innovation, where you have the creative destruction. Some jobs disappear and other jobs reappear. But as you can see, the cycle with the digital field is becoming much more shorter. Therefore, there is one question which is now looming in the public discussion. If you cannot recreate the jobs, how you can basically provide some decent income for the citizens. And the French, one of the leftist French presidential candidate proposed a tax for robots to compensate workers whose jobs become obsolete due to the technological developments. The argument is that somebody benefits from the robots, and those who benefit should pay taxes. From that taxes, universal basic income should be distributed. Universal basic income is the income that is guaranteed for all citizens. It is discussed now. In India, in one context, Scotland and Finland, there was a referendum in Switzerland which was refused to introduce universal basic income. Therefore, income that is assigned to citizens regardless of their job status or needs. Therefore, that is going to be very likely an important issue in discussions, more currently academic, philosophical, but gradually moving. We heard that ILO is also in some think tank mode discussing, thinking of how to address this issue. ILO is International Labour Organization. Next. The last and the global trends is using search warrants for data stored overseas. As you can recall, in 2016, Microsoft challenged request for access of emails request by US authorities for request to access of email which was stored in Microsoft servers in Ireland. And Microsoft won this case. Now we have the new case in Philadelphia, which was ruled this month, where Philadelphia court ruled that Google must comply with FBI search warrant and hand over data stored outside the United States. And the first reaction from Google was quoting the precedent with the Microsoft. And that case will be discussed. This trend reconfirms the general trend that we announced at the beginning of the year, that the courts will be increasingly shaping global digital policy. All the vacuums that exist will be basically filled by courts, because citizens have a right to justice and they can approach the court and they can basically get the ruling. And judges with their limited, mainly legal focus, not overall technological, economic, will be deciding on these issues. We'll have more cases related to Uber. We have one case in Brazil, waiting for European Court of Justice ruling on the status of Uber. Is it transportation on information company? That will continue the trend. Next. What can we expect in March? As you can see, it will be quite packed week with many developments. There will be an interesting conference for those of you who are based in Geneva on the data. There will be first symposium on the future network driverless car, during the car show here in Geneva on the night of March. There will be then an interesting event on big data on 21st and 27th of March. European Broadcasting Union will bring the experts to discuss impact of big data on media organizations. At the end of the month, 29th and 31st, I'm not going through the list. You can find the description of all events on our observatory, including reports from the previous events. On 29th and 31st, there will be RightCon Brussels meeting, which is one of the major meetings bringing, in a way, Silicon Valley to Brussels. There will be quite a few companies from Silicon Valley discussing privacy, e-commerce, and other related issues. Next. At the Geneva Internet Platform and Diplo Foundation, we will be stepping up, in a way, a preparatory process for the Internet Governance Forum. Based on the briefings that we had over the last 2 months, we identified data as one of the issues on which we will focus during 2017. There will be further consultations on the importance of data security, economic, human rights, and other aspects of data. We will have in February we had a briefing for heads of missions of Southeast Europe. The digital letter is out, and just-in-time course on internet governance, which started and which is going on. In March, there will be call for assistant curators for GIF Digital Watch, and on 28th of March we'll have a briefing, end of the month briefing for March developments. Next. We will be basically, before we move to the local hubs, and I would like to open the floor for the comments and questions here in Geneva, and also for our online participants who will pass their message through Barbara. Barbara, do we have anything online? In situ, any comment? Richard, traditions here. Richard Hill.
Thanks, Richard Hill. Yes, on the fake news. We had a meeting of the European chapters of the Internet Society last week in Amsterdam. I think there were 28 or 29 regional chapters present. And we had a very long discussion on fake news, and the general agreement was don't do anything, because everything that's being proposed looks far worse than what's happening. It doesn't mean we don't worry about it. We have to keep looking at it, but ideas like using artificial intelligence to weed out, that's just nonsense. You're just going to reflect the bias of the people writing the programs. And similarly, if you ask people to refer to a fact checker, well, then who checks the fact checker? And how many people are actually going to take the time to look at the fact checker, etc.? So our general feeling was that the way to counter this phenomenon is simply to make sure that there's enough good, true news out there and to educate people. And in the end, it should take care of itself that way. So the main focus was on educating people.
Richard, it reflects also discussion which was held at the Internet Governance Forum. There was a session, and the main focus was exactly on increasing online literacy, developing critical thinking, creating outfits that can reflect more on that. Out of the, let's say, 3 or 4 tools, one is artificial intelligence, which was proposed by Jigsaw and Google. The second is flagging. And the third one is more long-term online education and increasing the awareness and the capacity of people to detect fake news. Their focus was also on the third one, therefore it reflects this discussion. And okay. Do we have any question on? Okay.
Can you hear me? Yeah, it should be working. Yes, we have the discussion is now starting to be in full swing, but it started with the Microsoft case and Microsoft's proposal, to which Michael said that he applauds Microsoft's efforts, but it also makes me, as well as many others, wonder how these powerful multinational internet companies will continue to engage in the internet space as cyber city-states, given that they have more money and power than many countries. And this issue was also addressed by Cindy, who said it's really interesting approach from Microsoft in proposing a set of norms on cyber, but are there any projections on any framework of discussion that will be used by Microsoft in lobbying states? So these are 2 questions or issues related to the Microsoft proposal. And then we have another question from Romina. What is your opinion about the crafting in Denmark about the digital ambassador to negotiate with giants like Microsoft, Google, Facebook, etc., considering them for their size and could be friendly as states? Will digital citizens be well represented in their civil rights and interests? So this is another question that is coming up. And in the meantime, more questions are coming up in the discussion.
Okay, great. Let me start with the Danish digital diplomacy development. It is example how a good media campaign can raise the sort of visibility of the issue. Everybody is we receive many questions about Danish digital diplomacy, and it should be applauded, this approach. Denmark is trying to approach this issue in a constructive and comprehensive way, like many governments worldwide are trying to develop cyber or digital diplomacy. You use whatever prefix you want. I don't think that it is completely new development. We have here in Geneva cyber diplomats dealing only with the cyber issues. There are quite a few countries having the digital ambassadors or people dealing exclusively with the digital issue. Now, apart from the title and the banner that is used, the substantive issue is there are two substantive issues. Are those digital ambassadors going to cover digital space in comprehensive way, or only focusing on cyber security, which is usually, let's say, bias of many ministries of foreign affairs? In many ministries of foreign affairs, the entry point is the question of cyber security. Therefore, this is the first question. Are we speaking of cyber security or digital diplomacy, where it includes trade, security, human rights, culture, and other things? The second issue, which is important, is are those ambassadors going to engage internet companies, as the Danish proposal is focusing on? And here we have already some developments. Quite a few countries have a strong consular representation in San Francisco, which is de facto embassies to Silicon Valley. The general consulate in San Francisco are covering basically interaction with the most vibrant internet ecosystem in the world. And the question is, for example, will the future Danish digital ambassador focus on the negotiation with Facebook and Google on data protection, cyber security, and other issues? Those are, I would say, two issues: comprehensive approach, multidisciplinary, not only cyber security, and second, is this digital ambassador going to engage in this discussion? On the question of Microsoft, obviously the internet companies are quite rich. They publish their financial results at the beginning of February, and income of some of the major players could be compared for the two medium-sized countries, with that's the financial reality. Now, what one has to admit and to indicate and to praise in the question of Microsoft, they have been always very, very responsible player, the most responsible in the internet industry when it comes to engagement with the public policy. They were, obviously they have experience and history in dealing with governments. They have been selling the servers to governments for the last 15 years. Therefore, they develop understanding of how to interact with the governments. And the question of the size and the power is going to be there. I'm always the strong supporter of check and balances and as transparent space as it is possible. And this is probably the best cure to have a reasonable public policy introduced in such huge discrepancy between some small states and developing states and huge internet companies on the other side. Do you have any?
We have another. We have a very interesting remark from Liz, who is saying that who is a little bit skeptical about Microsoft's initiative, and she is raising the question: could this just be a PR move?
Okay, that's a good point. Well, as always, Liz is specialist for public diplomacy. She's teaching public diplomacy, and one can find some arguments for this view. Especially when it comes to relatively undeveloped concepts and the legal and policy consequences. There are many open questions. Therefore, if we speak about maturity of the proposal, one could go that far and possibly interpret it as a PR move. I don't think that it's a PR move because I think there is a genuine concern. Microsoft is spending $1 billion annually on cybersecurity. Business model, Microsoft business model, which is based on cloud computing increasingly. Okay, they're selling software, they have quite a balance, but cloud computing is important, is again potentially endangered by cybersecurity attacks. Therefore, there is, let's say, a real basis for their concern. Therefore, I wouldn't go that far to consider it as a PR move, although probably some signals of the half-baked product could lead someone towards this conclusion. We have always more active online community. Any question here in the room? Oh, Christian, please.
Yeah, there you go. Yin and yang of the first interactions. Just two comments. First of all, to react to your cyber ambassador. Of course, Canada has one, and you're right. We are mostly our hook into getting the minister interested in this. Obviously, is always a security hook, but hopefully we're moving towards a broader focus on development, accessibility, human rights issues, all of those things. But because, again, internet, many ministers just go, ooh, don't understand that it's technology. They don't really want to go into it, and we have to walk them through and train them. So we're getting there. We have a mission not only in San Francisco, Canada, but we also have one in Palo Alto directly. However, I have to nuance that. It is not specifically for diplomacy as much as it is for trade exchanges and commercial interests that are held out of there. So even if we do have a physical presence, we are still not at the point of having a digital engagement with these companies unless something very egregious was to happen. We're still at the level of trade dealings. So that is where our engagement is going. And one last thing in terms of events coming up that I would like to flag. Obviously, you mentioned the Human Rights Council. We will be discussing a resolution on privacy, but today the Special Rapporteur on Privacy has also released an advanced copy of his report. So if people are curious to see what's in there, it's focusing mostly on oversight committees for surveillance organizations nationally. So he's trying to make them more privacy friendly. So we'll see if he succeeds. Thank you.
Thank you, Christiane. Well, we just heard from Christiane Roy from a Canadian permanent mission here in Geneva. She is one of the cyber diplomats covering cyber issues in all its complexity, from cyber security, human rights, including trade. A bit, yeah. And thank you for this comment on the Palo Alto and San Francisco. What I was referring, that countries have their presence, their consulates, but they deal mainly with the trade and technological issue, not with traditional diplomacy. And the third comment was on the report. UN Special Rapporteur on Privacy released his report on privacy, and privacy will be discussed during the UN Human Rights Council this week. It's annual process. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, Barbara.
Yeah, the discussion is still ongoing in the chat. On the question of Microsoft, this is the hottest topic in the chat, I would say. Teresa is proposing that maybe it's not a PR move, but a corporate social responsibility move. And related to this, Hamza is raising a question, Hamza from the Tunis Hub. He's saying multinational companies' understanding of human rights and corporate social responsibility is not their priority for the moment. So how can, in the Middle East, North African region, how can they be held accountable through a robust national judicial system? And how can judges in the MENA region be both independent and domestically accountable to represent the right of consumers?
Well, this is I would say the question that we can answer in quite a few countries and jurisdictions worldwide, and I think that both comments from Teresa and Hamza could be concluding comments on this first phase of a discussion. For those of you who are here in Geneva, I would like to invite you to continue our discussion around the excellent food provided by our Indonesian friends, the Permanent Mission of Indonesia here in Geneva. Thank you. And for our online community, I would like to invite you to stay online. Stephanie Borg-Pseila will take over the moderation of the event, and you will hear the updates from the regional hubs in Tunisia, Southeast Europe, and Rio, Brazil. Thank you very much, and see you on 28th of March for the March.
Thank you, Evan, for a great roundup of the
and
development in February, and thank you, Barbara, our remote moderator, who shared our comments and questions with the in-situ audience. For our online audience, please stay with us for the regional updates. May I remind you that there is a parallel room available for discussions from our Southeastern Europe hub, and the link is the link that Sorina shared in the chat. So first we will hear the update from Tunisia. We have Ms. Nuha Othman from the Tunis hub, who will update us on the discussions that took place during the high-level African conference on internet governance. This took place in Algiers on the 13th of February. So, Nuha.
Hello everyone, welcome to this February briefing from Tunisia. My name is Nuha Othman. I'm a PhD student in computer science at ISG Tunis, belonging to Larodec Laboratory. I am also an internet policy analyst author with Geneva. So I would like to share with you the highlights of the African Conference on Internet Governance hosted in Algiers on 13 February 2017. So it was like a high-level meeting organized by the African Development Bank and the International Telecommunication Union, and was mainly marked by the participation of African Ministers of Information and Communication Technologies, representatives of the African Union, as well as experts in the field of internet governance. It was a great opportunity to exchange views and experiences between 24 African countries and to discuss the main concerns around internet governance in order to give a boost to effective cooperation in internet governance between African states. Participants in the meeting agreed to draw up a common strategies that makes the economic benefits of internet profitable to Africa and promotes Africa's digital identity while favoring the local content and multilingualism. In this event, Iman Houda-Ferron, Algerian Minister of Information and Communication Technologies, highlighted the need for involving all people, including those who have not access to internet, in the definition of internet governance foundations through transparent and democratic measures. She further urged ICT stakeholders to invest in infrastructures in African countries, calling these latter to participate in internet governance forums to fairly share the benefits of internet. During this event, Mr. Boubacar Siddiqui, the African Development Bank representative to Algeria, announced that the bank has approved the financing of the Trans-Sahara Optic Fiber Backbone project that will interconnect Algeria, Nigeria, Chad in the first step, and then Mali and Niger in the next step. It's long overdue. Also, Mr. Abdelaziz Ben Aziza, head of Cloud Services Division at Tunisia Telecom, stated that cybersecurity has become a matter of urgency to reduce cyber threats that have grown exponentially in recent years. He considered that improving cybersecurity would not be possible without a unified African program based on effective security measures in order to proactively prevent, detect, and respond to cyber attacks. These were the highlights of the African conference. We expect that its outcome will impact the use of internet in Africa. That's all. Thank you for your attention, and goodbye.
Thank you, Nuha, for the updates from the African Conference on IG. We will now hear the update from Luca Belli, Luca from the Rio Hub, who will share updates from the region. The Rio Hub had a discussion last week during which they discussed a few pressing issues, privacy being one of them, together with two expert guests who were attending the discussion. Luca, over to you.
Good morning, Yovan. Good morning to everyone. Welcome to Rio. We had a very interesting debate during our panorama of digital policy at the national level yesterday here in Rio. We had two special guests as usual, Yasudara Cordova for the Berkman Center, and then Danilo Doneda, who is the director of the Privacy Brazil project. Yesterday analyzed several issues with regard to privacy and identity, and stressed some concern with regard to some government-led initiatives, highlighting that the Brazilian citizen may face a threat with regard to the project to unify, to consolidate databases and documents, the various documents, in order to create a unique ID at the Brazilian level. The reference was to the bill that has been approved by the Chamber of Deputies this week to create such a unique ID at the federal level. And the bill has been approved by the Chamber, but will be discussed by the Senate over the next weeks. Danilo Neda also expressed some concern with regard to another initiative promoted by the mayor of the São Paulo city that has announced that within his plan to privatize several public goods, he is going also, he would like at least to privatize and to put on sale the database, including personal data of the users of the public transportation. This announcement has raised several concerns and several critiques from observers that have stressed that the users of the public transportation in Sao Paulo have never expressed their consent to sell their personal data. Another announcement came from the federal government that announced the end of the consultation on the Internet of Things. More than 2,200 replies were submitted to the consultation, and those replies will be used to elaborate a national strategy on the Internet of Things for the next months. The government also announced the elaboration of the first Brazilian digital strategy. The government has created an interministerial working group that will meet over the next months and will produce the first Brazilian digital strategy to be released over the next months. This is all for today. We wish you an excellent carnival, and we will speak next month.
Thank you, Luca, for sharing the updates from the region. This brings us actually to the end of our February briefing on IG. So thank you for participating in today's briefings. The recording, the presentation, and the digest will be available soon. They will be available on the same page where the announcement and the registration form were available. One last announcement, as you have heard from Jovan, the Geneva Digital Watch newsletter for February is now available for download, and I will share the link again. And this brings me to the end of the announcement. So thank you once again for joining, and we hope to see you again for the March briefing on the 28th of March. Thank you.